All right, let's see if I can share with you Elliott's model, some of my enthusiasm for it, and why I think it's critical for you to understand as you're designing, constructing, building your organizations. The first thing to notice about Elliott's model is that he uses a very peculiar word to describe layers inside your organization. How many of you have ever been to the Grand Canyon? Or if you haven't been to the Grand Canyon, you've seen a picture of the Grand Canyon? Now, as you peer out over the rim of the canyon, on the facing cliff, you're going to see these layers of rock. Now, if you're a geologist, there's a very special word that you'll use to describe these layers of rock. What would that word be? Good response. Most of the answers to my difficult questions are either on the screen or in your handout. I encourage cheating, looking over your neighbor's shoulder, whatever it takes to learn. Elliott uses this geology analogy in this way. As you look at these layers of rock, is any one layer of rock better or worse than any other layer of rock? No, they're just there. They just ended up there after eons of a sedimentary process that put dirt and soil and stuff and then compressed it as the weight of the successive layers build on top of that. But what happens to a single layer of rock where there's a point of weakness? What happens to that layer at this point of weakness? What happens here? It breaks, crumbles, there's erosion, fracturing. And what happens to all the layers immediately above that point of weakness? They cave in and settle in exactly the same place. So if you're supposed to be up here doing this level of work, you will suddenly find yourself down here doing this level of work. Elliott uses this geology analogy because the same thing happens inside your organization. No layer in your organization is better or worse than any other layer in the organization. In fact, they must all be healthy and robust. And wherever you have weakness in any layer in your company, you'll find fracturing, erosion, crumbling, and all the layers above will cave in exactly the same place. So Elliott uses the word strata or stratum to describe layers inside the organization. Our focus is going to be on the bottom three layers, starting with stratum 1, then we'll go to stratum 2, then stratum 3. We're going to look at the roles that people play and the tools that are associated with those roles, starting with stratum 1. So what's the role at stratum 1? Those are the people that do what? Those are the people that do production. Now you may be saying to yourself, okay, I got out of bed this morning and drove all the way down here to find out that my stratum 1 people are the ones who do production. I think I could have figured that out on my own. However, if you start here, you'll be able to follow this as it gets a bit more complicated. The easiest way to understand this role of production is to examine the tools that people use as they play this role. And the tools that people use turn out to be real tools. Machinery, equipment, CNC machines, lathes, forklifts, trucks. If it's a clerical position, it's probably a computer. Why? Well, because the role is to do production. Stratum 2. What's the role at stratum 2? Those are the people who make sure production gets done. A completely different role with a completely different set of tools, because the tools are no longer real tools. The tools are now schedules, checklists, and meetings. Why are those the tools? Because the role is to make sure production gets done. Stratum 3. What's the role at stratum 3? Those are the people who create your system. And now that I've used the word system, you may be able to go back to the Adizes model and examine the first layer in the Adizes model, infancy. The necessary focus was on production. Just get production done. Then we had to define and document our methods and processes to make sure production gets done. But at stratum 3, it is now one of creating a system. The easiest way to understand this role, distinct from the other roles, is to again examine the tools that are used. Because the tools are now flowcharts, schematics, time and motion studies, sequencing, and planning. Those are the tools of the stratum 3 manager. 3 very different roles using 3 very different sets of tools and populated by 3 very different people.